Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, and today we are back with another exciting tutorial. So as you know, we have a lot of tutorials on DevOps. So if you are looking for a DevOps tutorial for beginners, you are in the right place, and we are going to talk about a DevOps monitoring solution in this video. So in my previous tutorials, we have already talked about a lot of videos on Grafana, Prometheus, Loki, and also Influxdb. So what we have done is in one of the tutorial we did the Grafana, Influxdb, and Telegraf tutorial, where we have used CentOs machine, and we did the local installation of all these components, and we have set up the monitoring solution. So we had Telegraf, then we had Influxdb, and we had a Grafana. So the Telegraf will be using as an agent, which will send the data to the Influxdb database, and from there we'll use that as a data source for Grafana. So that's what we did it in a normal installation step. So we had a requirement how we can set these things using a Docker containers. So this tutorial is about how to set up the same infrastructure on Telegraf, Influxdb, and Grafana using Docker Compose, so that we can create services on all these components, and we'll have all this setup done in quick few minutes once you run the Docker Compose file. So we will talk about how we can write the Docker Compose, and also how to configure your telegraf.conf file so that all the data will be sent to Influxdb, and then how we can use the Grafana for all those. Okay, so before I get to the actual discussion on this, let me give you a quick highlight on what we are going to do in this tutorial, then we can get started. Okay, great. So we are going to talk about Grafana, Telegraf Influxdb tutorial. So as I mentioned, we are going to set up Telegraf as a Docker container, and also from the Telegraf, we'll have a telegraf.conf file, which will configure it so that what all data to be sent from the machines to the Influxdb, which will be also running on Docker as a container. So, and we from Influxdb, what we will do is we'll have Grafana, and Grafana is the visualization software. So we'll configure the data source of Influxdb into Grafana, and to run all these things as a Docker container, what we are going to do is we are not going to run separate commands to create containers. We will use Docker Compose. So we'll have the Docker Compose.yaml file. We will define all these services for and all the configurations in the Docker Compose file, so that we can run the Docker Compose file, and all these containers will be created by default. Okay, so let me talk about, if you're not sure about what is Telegraf, what is Influxdb, what is Grafana. So let's talk about a little bit on what is Telegraf, Influxdb, and Grafana. So Telegraf is an agent. Okay, so that is the one which collects the data and process, aggregate, and these data which the metrics from the machines which Telegraf will collect, which you want to monitor, you want to monitor CPU or memories, or some Docker containers, or it can be processors. So all those things you define in your telegraf.conf, and it can send all these metrics to various outputs, like whether it can be Influxdb database, or it can be a Graphite, or it can be Kafka. So a different kind of outputs. Okay, so that's the basic use of Telegraf. And Influxdb, as I mentioned, is an open source database, time series database, which is written in Go, and this metrics sent from Telegraf will be stored in this Influxdb. And the last part is the Grafana. So Grafana is also as an open source data visualization and monitoring suite. So as I mentioned, Grafana is mainly used for visualizations, and this can be used with other Prometheus and other open source tools as well. So Grafana use this data analysis platform, which is Grafana is a data analysis platform which allows you to query and create panels, dashboard using this data. So once you connect Influxdb, you have the data in Grafana, We can use queries, and you can create panels, dashboard using those data. Okay, so in our tutorial, what we will do is we are going to set up this monitoring system using Grafana, InfluxDB, and Telegraf. So what we will learn from this tutorial is like how you can set up all these components using Docker Compose. And once you have the Docker Compose, you also need Telegraf to be configured, so that we'll also see what is the configuration file, telegraf.conf, or how you can write that so that data can be sent to the InfluxDB. And you need to also configure the InfluxDB as a data source in Grafana, so we will also see that how you can do that. And at the last, you need to create some dashboards and all those things in Grafana using the metrics which is already sent from InfluxDB to the Grafana. So that's what we are going to do in the whole this tutorial. So I'm sure you're going to like this. And before I get into the actual demo or hands-on on this tutorial, where we'll be using Docker and Docker Compose machine. If you don't know how to set up that, you need to check my previous tutorial. So before I do that, I would request you, like, if you are new to my channel or if you have not subscribed to my channel, click on the subscribe button. Also like my video, and also kindly support by sharing, and also give your feedback what you like it, or if you have any other feedbacks which I can improve, or what you're looking for new videos. All those feedbacks, please give it on the comment section. So let's get started. So this is the machine where I have Docker installed, and I also have Docker Compose also installed. So you need to have both installed to have it running. Docker alone is not enough, you need to have Docker Compose as well. And I don't have any Docker containers running. And what we will do is we need to create a Docker Compose file. So let me start with the Visual Studio Code editor. So I have already written this Docker Compose file, and also I will share this using my GitHub link in this video description. So you can go to the video link and you can refer this Docker Compose file. Now what we are going to do is we are going to create 3 services, one for Telegraf, one for InfluxDB, and one for Grafana. Okay, so there will be 3 services which creates 3 containers. So the version I'm going to use the Docker Compose is 3.6. so when you're creating, if you have a different version, you can use based on that. So the image, the first part is like we need to define the image for the Telegraf. So you have different kind of image versions. So I'm just going to select Telegraf, and I'm not going to set any tags, so it can use the latest one. And I am using giving a name for the container, so it can be any name. So I'm giving the name as Telegraf. And the restart, I'm going to give an option like, so it can restart the container if something goes wrong. And the main part is like the volume. Okay, so I have a local file called telegraf.conf that I'm going to attach to the container. So this is the main part. So this config file we have to write so that the Telegraf containers can start with this configuration which we are going to define. Okay, so that's the important part which I will show you what we are writing on the telegraf.conf as well. And we are mentioning that this service also depends upon InfluxDB, and the port for Telegraf is 8125. So the next service is the InfluxDB, and the image for InfluxDB, I am using InfluxDB and the tag 1.8 Alpine. If you use the latest image for InfluxDB like about 2.0, you may face some problem with the authentication. So that's why in this case I'm using 1.8. Because there we need to do more higher customization for this authentication to be fixed in the InfluxDB. So that's what I'm using, the 1.8 Alpine, and the container name is InfluxDB 8. And again, the restart I'm going to give always. I'm also giving some environmental variables where I can define that there should be a database or called Influx, so it can create a database called Influx. And also I'm going to set an admin user and a password, so that this if we need to use this username and password, it can be used as well. Now the port for InfluxDB is 8086, and I'm also giving a volume, so InfluxDB_data, which can map to the container. So this is not mandatory. If you want to store the data it's as a persistent, you can use volume. If not, you can keep it without volume as well. And the third service is the Grafana. Here I'm going to use the image Grafana slash Grafana, and I'm going to give a name for the container as Grafana server, and also again I'm going to tell restart always. And this Grafana is also depend on Influxdb, and we are also setting some environment variable where I can set the username and password for Grafana as well. And the last part is the port, which the Grafana port is 3000, and the volume we are using the persistent volume with Grafana underscore data, which is mapped to var lib Grafana. Again, this one also, if you don't want to have a persistent volume of your container for Grafana to your local, you don't have to set any volume. If you are setting a volume, then you have to mention this part as well, because I've used two volume, one is for Grafana and one for Influxdb. That's why I have this volume section as well in the Docker Compose file. If you are using some other networks or anything, then you will have to define that as well here. So this is the total Docker Compose file. It's not that complicated, it's pretty simple. Now let's talk about this part where we have to map a telegraf.conf file to the container. So if you see, this is the total Telegraf file which I have used. If you are not sure how to write this, you can go to this GitHub link. This will also, I will give it into the video description, which is for Telegraf, which will give you the complete example on how to write each parameter which you want to monitor. So it's have a lot of options. For example, let me go back here. So if we have something called Influxdb outputs, right, CPUs. So if you go here, you can go to CPU. Let me check. So you have an option for CPU. If you click on CPU, it will tell you, how you can write the configuration. So you can see like how you need to write what data has to be, put into the configuration file. So you can refer that link to write this config file. So in this case, what we are going to define is we are going to define the agent where the host name is this one. So this is the host name where we are going to run the agent. And the output, so whatever data which coming out of from Telegraf has to be sent to the Influxdb. So the output, we are going to use the Influxdb. If you are using other database, you need to use that. And here we have to use a URL where I'm going to define this URL. So 8086 is the port number, and I'm giving the service name. I think if you use the IP address or local host, it also should work, but I'm using the service name, so which as the Docker is getting created. Then the database which we are going to use, this influx, which is coming from this section where we are going to create a DB name. If you are using a different name here, then you have to change based on what the database available. And this is the authentication username and password, which is coming from basically from the documentation for from Telegraf and Influxdb authentication. So if you see, this is an Influxdb documentation to authenticate Telegraf request to Influxdb. You need to edit this telegraf.conf and you need to put some entries here. So based on this, we are using this configuration for authenticating the Influxdb. Now these are the what you need to monitor from the machine. So we are using CPU. As I mentioned, these are all some templates. So we are also using disk. We are disk IO, kernel, memory, process, swap, system. So I have given few entries so that it can monitor those things and it can be sent to the Telegraf. Okay. So let's do one thing. Let me copy this content and I'll go to my machine. And I don't have any file, so I'll create a file called telegraf.conf and I'll paste that content over here and let me save that. So I have a file now called telegraf.conf. Let me create a file called docker compose.yaml. Okay, and let me go to my text editor and I will copy this content and I will paste that here. Okay, so we have two files now. One is Docker Compose and we have Telegraf. So this has to be there in the same folder because Telegraf we have mentioned as /. So that means it's in the same folder. If you're putting on a different folder, then you have to change this location based on that. Now what you can do is you can run docker compose up. If you want to run it in detached mode, you can run it in -d, but I just want to run in docker compose up so that it can create and we can see what is happening. Okay, so you can see it started doing some actions. Let's see what happens. And the images are already available, that's why it has quickly gone to the next process. If you don't have the images, it will start with the downloading the image first. It may take some time. So now you can see it has mentioned like it's listening to the port in the Grafana, and it's also trying to write something into the InfluxDB. So let's open the Grafana in a web-based URL and let's see what we log in. Okay, so you can access Grafana using your IP address and the port 3000. Then you can log in with your username and password, which we set into the Docker Compose. So which is admin. So if you have given something else, you need to give that, and you need to set a new password. Okay, so I think we are done with the password side. Now what we need to do is we need to configure the data source. Okay, so I'm going to use InfluxDB here, and we need to enter the InfluxDB location. So I'm going to copy this because I'm using the same host number, and the port number is 8086 for the InfluxDB. And let me go down, and we need to give the database name. So it should be Influx, and the username is admin, and what was the password we used? It's also admin, right? So that's also admin, and you can save and test. So now you can see data source is working. Okay, so let's go back. So we have configured the database side. So and let's go to the dashboard. Let's create one dashboard. Okay, now you can see to create dashboard, you already have the data source. Now you need to write some queries. So you have to select what you want to use, default, and the selection measure. So you can see it already started showing up like CPU, right? It's doing like CPU, disk, kernel, and all those things. So let me use CPU, and what you want to do, you have to use CPU or host. I will use host, and this is the host name, right? And let's see some values here. So you can see usage count. Yeah, you can see it's already started coming something here. You can also change, like it can be count. You see, can be count. Just now it started coming, so that's why it's only very few numbers are coming here. You can also change like mean, right? Or you can change based on what you need, sum, or you can change based on that. So let's put count. So you can see the data is there coming, right? And if you want, you can try to change with some different kind of chart as well, but you'll have to change the query if there is some problem. So you need to do that. Okay, so I'm just trying to show you some example. So that's all I am trying to do. Now you can also change, like it's not CPU. If you want to use some other you have memory, you can use memory. Then you can see your host is this, and you need to change for memory. It's like more of a different, like, okay, it's maybe high free. You can see, you can remove this. You can add some other values, like let's see, what do we have? Yep, you can see some data is coming, right? Here none. So you just need to understand how to create this. You need to have some kind of testing to be done from your end, what kind of data you want to see. So based on that, you can make this change. But I am just trying to show you, like how much data is coming, and what you can do. So I'm not going to show about how you can create dashboards or anything. That's not the scope of this tutorial. This tutorial is more about how the data is coming to Grafana from InfluxDB, and InfluxDB is getting from Telegraf. So that's all. If you see, we have data coming from all kind of processes like disk, CPU, kernel, memory, and all those things which we have configured. You can also check like this link where you have more inputs methods, so you can go through it. So there are quite some input method. You can go through it, and you can edit your telegraf.conf file, so that you can get necessary data to your Grafana screen. So only thing is you need to edit based on the requirement. So as I said, like we are running all these containers now with as Docker containers, and we are use Docker Compose. Let me also show you in the machine where these containers are running. So if you see like this is a new session. If I just want to show you like the containers running, so you have 3 containers. One Grafana server, other one is Telegraf, another one is InfluxDB, right? Let me also show you the database created, so you can use docker exec and InfluxDB, that's the container name, and let's run the command like influx execute show databases. Now you can see like it's showing the database influx, right, which we created and underscore internal. So if there are other databases, that will also show up here. So just wanted to show you that. So that's all the Docker containers running. So that is all I wanted to show you for this tutorial. I will link all these links for the Docker Compose or telegraf.conf and other reference links into my GitHub locations. In my GitHub location, that will be put into this video description as well, so you can refer that, and you can use that. And I would request you, like if you are new to my channel, or if you are not subscribed to my channel, for watching more videos like this, kindly subscribe to my channel and also like my videos. Please keep sharing with all your circles, so that we can grow together. And also I would request you to give your feedback, your comment, what you like, what you don't like, and what you want to see in future, so that we can plan some of the videos based on your requests. So thank you for watching.